EU election observers, how Inec's lack of transparency contributed to voter apathy. Yes, Inec refused to be transparent with the elections, both the federal and state elections, because the current administration, APC government, have bought them over. The guy, I think it's been revealed that Mahmoud Yakubu was nominated by Tinubu's camp to become Inec's chairman. So all of that led to their not being, and that is why Tinubu had the confidence to say it's his turn, because he felt he has put the right people in the right places that will rig the election for him when it comes to his time. And so the INEC refused, in fact, willfully broke down the Electoral Act of 2022 because of Tinubu, because of what he needs to, what he's getting for Tinubu, and probably they see it as payback time. That is why Tinubu is bold enough to tell Buhari that it is payback time. So the election, both federal and state, were shams. That is the truth. So the EU election observers are connecting that lack of transparency to the reason we had vote apathy this period. Let's see what they have to say more. As many Nigerians continue to express disappointment over the conduct of the gubernatorial state assembly elections held on Saturday, March 18, 2023, the European Union election observers in Nigeria have attributed the low voter turnout to the actions of political parties and the lack of transparency displayed by the Independent National Electoral Commission. And that is true. With widespread reports of voter suppression and intimidation, voter apathy was witnessed in Lagos, Anambra, Oyo, Abia, and other states across the country. The EU's chief election observer, Barry Andrews, in a statement issued on Monday, 20th, 2023, said that voter apathy witnessed in Saturday's election was, in part, a clear consequence of failures by political parties and, unfortunately, also by INEC. A resident in Abia State, living in one of the villages in Isialangwa North, who preferred not to be mentioned, told a newsroom correspondent that supporters of the ruling party in the state said that those not voting for the candidate of the People Democratic Party should remain at home. You see? So why will PDP supporters say this in Abia State? The same way the PDP supporters in Delta State said it. Fred Ajudwe, okay, the man that had all the 419 police cases in the country, okay, right from the time of Babangida till now, okay, he came out publicly to say anybody that is not voting PDP in Delta State should better remain in the house. How can he say that? Now, the same thing has been repeated in Abia State. The same thing that APC people did in Lagos. Also in Lagos, 2 days before the governorship poll, the chairman of Lagos Motor Parks Management Committee, Musiliu MC Oluomo Akisanya, was seen in a viral video making comments that many believe were an attempt to intimidate Igbo voters in the state from coming out to vote. The EU election observers have been in Nigeria since January 11, 2023 to monitor pre- and post-election development in Africa's most populous nation. Throughout the mission, we saw that Nigerians have a great appetite for democracy and are keen to engage in various civic activities. However, in many parts of the country, their expectations were not met, Barry Andrews said. That is true. The expectations were not met. Okay, so the EU observers also noted that despite the increased use of technology in the electoral process, INEC's lack of transparency led to widespread distrust in the electoral process, which contributed to low turnout, especially during this governorship election. Ahead of the 2023 general election, the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, which many believed will lend credibility to Nigeria's electoral system, was introduced. Also, the electoral body promised electronic transmission of results from the polling unit to the IRF portal, a promise that was not fulfilled in the February 25 presidential election, which may have contributed to the low turnout witnessed in the gubernatorial elections. So polling on election day was disrupted by multiple incidents of thuggery and intimidation of voters. Polling officials, observers, and journalists at Lagos and Kano and other states in southern and central were most affected. The statement reads. That is the truth. That is the truth. Okay. So what is happening here is that voter apathy was actually largely influenced by lack of Inec transparency, but the key one was thuggery at all levels. Thuggery at all levels. It was so terrible in Lagos. It was terrible in Abia. It was terrible in part of Delta. It was terrible in Rivers State. It was terrible in Kano. So we saw a situation where during the presidential election, okay, the Mahmoud Yakubu was in charge of the election rigging from the Inec headquarters in Abuja. He was issuing instructions necessary to all the state Inec resident commissioners, and they were dishing those instructions to the Inec ground staff. But at the governorship election, the Inec resident commissioners in each of the states were already in the pocket of the governors, and so they worked for the governors to support the interests of the incumbent governors across the states in the country. Okay, so even though in some states it was tough, in some states like Lagos, it was terrible. It was terrible. Okay, it was terrible in Lagos because that was where we had the highest level of voter apathy. That's where we had the highest level of thuggery. That is where we had the highest level of malpractice, election malpractice by the Inec staff. Okay, that was very, very bad in Lagos. So now these EU observers have also come to see it. Definitely all the international election observers, foreign election observers that came from West African countries and from other Western nations actually condemned the election, both presidential elections and governorship election, because of what? One is thuggery, high-level thuggery at every point. Two, it's INEC lack of transparency. One, they failed to transmit election results from the polling unit to the RF portal as promised. Two, they violated the Electoral Act of 2022. Three, they violated INEC's own guidelines for the elections. Okay, and they did all of that successfully because they are working for government of the day. The government of the day is their paymaster. So it was a case of he who pays the piper takes the tone. The government of the day pays them, and so they dictated for them and they worked for them. That was why they rigged the presidential election and rigged Tinubu in there. Look at how Mahmoud Yakubu rigged that election. Okay, he shut down the server with his people, and then came back again at night to declare winner, even though results were still coming from the states across the country. It was as bad as that. And then he refused to allow transmission of vote from the polling unit to the server. So the introduction of the BVS machine was defeated because it was bypassed. It was thrown aside. It wasn't used. They went on manual the way it has always been done in Nigeria. So the value of the BVS was not derived, was not earned at all. We didn't see the value of the BVS because it was not used. And where the BVS was used, they didn't use the result from the BVS. Rather, they resorted to manual documentation, tipexing, writing and cancelling, and changing and altering figures, and then sent a dotted figure straight to the Inec National Collation Center at Abuja. So that was how bad it is. And that's exactly what this EU election observer is saying. Okay, that it was very, very, very terrible. It was terrible beyond imagination. It was terrible. So Barry Andrews led the EU team, and he was the person that released this statement on behalf of his team, kind of final report concerning Nigerian presidential and governorship elections. So that is international observation. So it's been discredited by the EU as well. So thank you for listening, and let's have your comment.